Here's a question for you. Can your entire leadership team describe what you do in the same way? Most can't. And that's a misalignment. That misalignment is costing you deals, burning cash on marketing that confuses people, and is tanking your valuation in investor conversations. My guest today is Mike Damphousse, who spent the last 8 years fixing exactly this problem for 50 plus companies from seed stage to IPO. Mike co-founded Category Design Advisors with Kevin Manny after they co-authored the book that introduced category design to the world. They've now written the Category Creation Formula, which releases in a couple of weeks, and it's everything they've learned from taking companies like Prescriptive from hundreds of confusing investor pitches to 26 million in Series A in weeks. But here's what makes Mike's approach different. He's not a marketing consultant. He's a former CEO and CMO with 30 plus years in the trenches who will tell you that if you're not starting category design at the CEO level, you're wasting your time. And he's developed a 4-day category sprint that compresses months of strategy work into one intensely focused workshop that aligns your entire executive team around a single category story. So today I'm hoping we'll unpack why great products die in what Mike calls category jail, how to find opportunities in the adjacent possible, and the specific process that gets 8 opinionated executives to agree on positioning when they haven't agreed on anything in months. So let's just start here. Mike, I wonder if you could walk me through the exact moment in that prescriptive workshop. I think it was back in January 2020, just before the pandemic, when the room shifted from debating what the company does to discovering rewriting the script as their category and tagline. I believe the CEO, Chris Grimes, said that the team still talks about that day years later. What happened in that room that kind of created that lasting impact?
Yeah, it's interesting. In all the work we do, there's always this moment, typically towards the end of day one, our first workshop, where everybody has the category DNA in their body, right? They see it, they know it, they debate it, but it's a universal truth. They can see, it's a blue sky outside today. That's a universal truth. But that DNA is scrambled, and it's hard sometimes for people to see it themselves. But at the end of that first day, there's always an aha moment where the DNA gets sequenced, and all of a sudden people understand what their category is. And the magic of category design is getting through that process. We had one client, this is early on, probably 2017 or 18, CEO of a 2-year startup. And as we presented the category point of view, which is a strategic narrative, a story, we'll talk about, I'm sure, multiple times today. We presented the category point of view, and he was standing in the back of the room just listening. And all of a sudden I looked up after I was done reading it, and he was wiping the corner of his eye. He had a tear in his eye. And I looked at him and I said, Ali, what's going on? And he said, Mike, he goes, we've been working on this for 2 or 3 years now, and that's the first time I've heard our story properly articulated. And it's that realization that the story makes sense. That's such an awakening moment. Prescriptive was really cool. They're a bunch of ex-Microsoft executives, really high-powered team. And again, same thing. They were working on their project for a couple of years. In fact, before they started the company, they were working on the problem. And all of a sudden, you just see everybody in the room look at each other and, oh my God, that's who we are. And it's a very formative moment. Lawyers hate it when I tell them this when we're reviewing the contract, but the process itself is like therapy, and that is as big of a deliverable as anything else you go through.
Very interesting. I would imagine that in a lot of situations, you've got people who are probably quite skeptical until that moment. I'm curious, how are you able to build that level of cohesion to drive people towards that one story?
Well, being a facilitator is probably the biggest job description requirement that Kevin and I have. you've got a room of really hard driving startup executives or even large companies. When we worked with LinkedIn, their sales solutions division, LinkedIn had 18 people in the room, which is way too many. It gets unwieldy. But the process that we go through is it's almost like a boxing match. They tell us what they think they are, we tell them what they're not, and then we debate it until the debate is just, it can get bloody and bruisey. In fact, we had a client where the VP of sales resigned his job in the middle of the meeting. It was getting so heated that the CEO and the lead evangelist and the co-founder, who was the CTO, just looked at this guy, and his name was Mike as well. And I remember them saying, "Mike, we need to talk." We took a break, and 10 minutes later, they came back in without Mike. And that's how powerful the process is. It's very self-revealing.
Okay. You describe category jail as being stuck in a crowded space where buyers can't understand why you're different. Sprinkler, I believe, was in category jail. Analysts thought they were just another CXM company, but they were doing unified customer experience management. How did you help them see that distinction when they'd been describing themselves as a CXM company for years? What's the process of breaking out of category jail when you've been imprisoned in there for quite a while?
So the term category jail comes from an article we published a few years ago, and it is in the book. And the article, if you want to Google it before the book comes out, is called Suffering from One of These 7 Business Conditions. Category design is your RX, your prescription. And basically, it's all the different conditions that companies suffer from that category design can help them get out of. And one of them is category jail. And category jail is when you're stuck in a very crowded space and you can't get out. Very common. Buyers and analysts, they don't understand what you're offering or why you're different. And if you're not different, then it's a very crowded space and people wonder what it is you're trying to tell them, right? We tell people all the time, when you're describing who you are, don't rely on traditional marketing, right? If you're using superlatives, we're bigger, better, brighter, faster, cheaper. If it ends in ER, you're using the wrong word. Tear it down and put it together in such a way that you're talking about the problem first. And if you can describe to somebody what their problem is, and then they can imagine what the solution is, that's very key to what we do, is we paint the problem so clearly that the listeners or the people reading about you immediately go, "Oh my God, I can see the solution." And that solution we introduce is the category. It's not a brand. It's not your spec sheet. It's not your pricing. It's not why you're better than competitors. It's why you're different and why you're solving a problem in a different way. And if you can do that, you're going to break out of jail. And if you can get out and you can start being seen as different, and I've seen companies do it in very crowded spaces. Look at the smartphone space. In the early 2000s, we all had some smartphones, right? They did text, they took pictures. There were still even a few flip phones around. But basically, when Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone, it was a new way of doing something in a different manner, right? You had the finger touching on the screen. You had the biggest differentiator for the iPhone was the app. The App Store enabled, their campaign was, there's an app for that. That was their whole category point of view. People realized that they're walking around with this device in their pocket and it could solve so many things. And so that very crowded space of smartphones went from Motorola, BlackBerry, and all the other devices that were there to eventually emerging to the iPhone and the Android platforms. And I think the last statistic I saw was Apple generates 75% of the profits from the smartphone category. Think about that. There's hundreds and hundreds of times more Androids in the world because of the price point, but 75% of the profits are from the category leader, which is Apple.
Very, very interesting. Just to perhaps provide a degree of greater clarity. Let me ask you this. For executives who are listening to this and going, where are we exactly? And the point of confusion in their minds might be, how do I know if we're actually in category jail versus just having a sales execution problem?
Sales gets blamed for everything, and after them gets marketing blamed, right? A smart CEO will realize there's a common thread missing. And we like to think that that common thread is their point of view, right? If I'm a salesperson that's pitching the same way for years and I'm struggling, or I'm a marketing department that is communicating what we do in the same way every marketer on earth has done for years, you're never going to stand out. One thing that a good category designer does is they tell a story. They have a point of view that's emotional. It starts with the problem. You can be similar to a bunch of other companies, but if you can tell the story in a way that people truly believe, oh, this is different. They're solving a problem I didn't know I had, or they're solving a problem I didn't know there was a solution to, then that's got the makings of a new category. And investors are so good at seeing this. We're publishing an article this week about VCs and how they look for categories. And they know that good companies and good teams are going to make them money 1 out of 10 times. I'm a limited partner at a VC. I know the outcomes, but it's at 1 out of 10 times. Is it going to be a multi-billion-dollar return or several hundred million? That's great. The billion-dollar returns are the ones that they come from new categories. Play Bigger, which is up here in the corner, the book that introduced category design in 2016, co-authored by Kevin, my partner. Play Bigger did a study that showed that 76% of the market economics of a category go to the category leader. If that's not enough motivation for somebody to focus on category design, I don't know what is.
Is there also such a thing as choosing category jail simply because you're afraid to differentiate?
Well, let me put it this way. If you choose category jail, I'm not investing in you.
Fair enough.
And I got a pretty successful track record. When I have an exit, I tattoo the company logo on my arm, which if I didn't have a long sleeve shirt, I'd show you. But I've got all these category design logos, winners and exits on my arm. And if you're in category jail, I'm never getting a tattoo. So that's not going to work.
You've developed this compressed 4-day category sprint where I believe you're bringing in about 6 to 12 leaders into a room, spend day 1 in intensive discussion. Days 2 and 3, you write the POV, and day 4, everyone edits it together. Now, most big consulting firms, I think, would stretch this into about a 6-month, $1 million engagement. So I'm curious, why is the compressed timeline actually better for the outcome? And what do you gain from this intensity that you'd lose from a longer process?
Think about it this way, right? If you've got a medical issue and the doctor says, I need to do surgery with you over the next 6 months, would you choose that option, or would you choose the option where somebody says, I'll have you out of here in a week? When we first started doing this, the history of category design goes back prior to Play Bigger, where all of our friends, the Play Bigger crew, the original crew, Christopher Lockhead, Al Ramadan, Dave Peterson, and they brought in Kevin to write the book with them. A lot of the projects were those 6-month type engagements. And when Kevin and I started doing it, at first we were learning as we went. We were doing the longer engagements. We were embedded with the company. But what we realized was the real aha moment came from that core interface that we did to generate the POV. There's a lot of other stuff that goes with category design, no doubt. In fact, our process isn't just that 4-day workshop session, but there's a 2 to 3 week discovery process where we're researching, studying materials, interviewing all the executives. Then we're together for that week, where we actually do the workshops and interface head to head and create the point of view. gain consensus on the point of view amongst the whole team. But then after that, there's the mobilization phase of category design, which is bringing it to the world. And mobilization can take months to years, no doubt. Most big categories take years to develop. And our model is a bit different, right? In fact, I hate being considered a consultant, because a consultant means you're like a seagull. You fly in, you shit all over the place, and you fly out, right? And we're not like that. We have a very unique model where, sure, we take some cash for what we do, but we always want equity in the company that we're working with. We want to be part of the team. So even though the heavy lifting takes place during that compressed time frame, we're involved for years after the fact. I remember LinkedIn. LinkedIn brought us in. We did the workshop. It was a big struggle, actually, to do that project. And then they put their whole product development on hold for 6 months and changed directions so that the product itself could meet what they wanted to tell the world. And that took 6 months. They finally released the product. The rollout itself was about a 6-month effort. Now we're a year into it, and we're getting, hey, here's a new press release coming. Here's a video. Could you help us make sure that we're category forward in this message? Sprinkler, you mentioned earlier, we helped with the S1 document to help them position themselves to go public. And that one aspect of how we work, where we have some skin in the game with the equity, sets us aside from every consultant any CEO's ever hired, because we never send a second invoice. We're there, we're part of the team, we're on the board of advisors for anything related to category work.
That makes a lot of sense. The 4-day sprint is pretty unique as well. Has there ever been a workshop that didn't reach alignment by day 4?
Yes. There have been 3 out of, I think we've done 54 projects now. We only do 4 or 5 projects a year, depending on the cycle. COVID slowed us down a little bit, of course. But there was one back just before COVID. We had to go back 7 times. And the biggest reason for that is they really didn't know who they were, what they were. And when a company doesn't truly understand who they are, it makes our job almost impossible. We become part of the founder team at that point. We help create who they are. Okay. They were a very complex company. They were in the genomic space. They're now, I think their last valuation was $4 billion, so we did something right. But it's happened a few times. We had one just 6 months ago, AI company. And after the workshop sessions, we kind of looked at each other, and I said to Kevin, I said, they don't quite know who they are yet. We're going to have to do this again. So we scheduled the second series of workshops a few weeks later. We eventually nailed it, and they threw away 75% of what they thought they were. And they narrowed it down and focused.
So it's a work in progress in a lot of instances, from what I'm hearing. I'm also curious, days 2 and 3, how much of the work actually happens in those days when you're writing the POV?
That's actually a very interesting process. Kevin is the natural writer. He's been writing his whole life. He's got 15 some books under his belt. Was a journalist before he got into this. And so what we do is we finish day 1. Kevin usually puts his initial thoughts down that night while they're fresh. Then on the second day we get together and we make sure everything's in the right direction. I play editor and producer. And then Kevin goes away and puts words to paper or computer, whatever his mode is that day. And we do probably 5 to 10 editing cycles over that 2-day cycle. And we're generating a 800 to 1,000 word document that tells the story. In fact, and I don't know if you put links to resources on your podcast comments, but if you do, I'll provide you a few. We've got an article where 3 companies published their point of views as public videos, public facing. So it's not exactly word for word what we write, because a point of view is an internal document. Think of it as your constitution, right? It is who you are. It's the flag on the hill that you're going to march to. But with a change of a few words and a little bit of the tone, it's a very good public facing manifesto. And after 2 days, we usually about sometime during day 2, we're going through one of the revisions and we're down to this word or that word. The story's done. We feel really good about it. But then the real fun comes. And this is all described in the book. We get together on the 4th day with the client and we present the point of view top to bottom. And we literally read it out loud, presenting every thought on screen as a slide. And we just turn to the group afterwards and say, what was your initial thinking? What's your emotion after hearing that? We get initial feedback, and then we'll spend hours, sometimes the whole day, going line by line, making sure that everything is exactly right. And this is an important part of the category design process. If somebody thinks a word should be red and somebody else argues, no, it's magenta, we're going to let them argue until they all agree on a word. And that process itself brings such unity to the executive team. They all bought into every word in that document. And when they sign their name on it at the end of the day, that is their mission, right? That's their point of view. They can march to that for the next several months and years and deliver that story. And that process of creating unity is so valuable. And I've seen it over and over again.
Prescriptive, I believe, went from hundreds of confusing pitches to closing 26 million Series A in weeks after the category design workshop. And I believe Chris Grimes said the immediate impact was getting no faster with wrong fit investors and closing the right investor quickly. From your experience working with, I believe, 50 plus companies, what's the actual mechanism by which category design accelerates fundraising? Is it just clarity, or was there something deeper happening in the investor psychology?
Think of it this way. Investors, they know the power of a category. They know that if a company is introducing something that's new, but they've heard the story a handful of times, it's not that exciting. But when they hear a story that is presented in such a way that they can truly say, wow, this is green pasture, this is new, they know that's going to be a big return, not just a good return. In the case of Prescriptive, Chris Blackley, the CEO, Chris was the week after we worked with them going to the JP Morgan Healthcare Summit in San Francisco, which is a big summit in healthcare. And investors are all over the place as well. He had 10 pitch meetings set up during that week. We finished our meeting on Friday. He went away for the weekend and rewrote his pitch deck. And he had those 10 meetings. He only got one rejection. He got 9 interested parties. And that was the $26 million round you talk about. It's just so powerful. In fact, another link for the resource list is an article on our site about the perfect pitch deck for category designers. And it was put together by us and vetted with several VCs. And it's just a very simple formula. Don't talk about yourselves as much as people do. Don't talk about your product as much as people do. Talk about the problem. If you can truly paint the picture of the problem you're solving, then tell them how you're going to do it and who's going to do it. The 5 slides that tell the story are way more important than the 7 slides that talk about how you're going to spend it and how good you are.
Do you find that, I'm sure the category story would be relevant regardless of the round of funding, but do you find it tends to have more of an impact at a particular stage at which a company is at?
Actually, no. We get asked the question all the time, when is a good time to do category design? And the answer is tomorrow. If you're 2 guys in a credit card, just graduated from Stanford, and you're starting a company, it's a good time to do category design. If you're LinkedIn and you're a multi-billion-dollar division of a trillion-dollar company, it's a good time to do category design. It truly is a strategy for all companies of all stages. And the sooner you do it and the more disciplined you are to revisit it, category design is a living thing. You're going to set your path. You're going to write your POV. You're going to pick a category name, but you need to revisit it on and on. The title of our new book is The Category Creation Formula. And the formula is context, plus missing plus innovation equals a category. And shifting context is such an important part of category design. You might have a pandemic, you might have an economic collapse, you might have global war, you might have a new technology like AI. So if you have a category that you painted 5 years ago and something big shifts, like everything in the Gen AI space the past couple of years, update your POV, update your category, and let it be a growing thing, right? Don't be afraid to modify it. It's something that needs to adapt to the world as the world adapts to you. And that's the whole piece of the formula called context. And since we're on it, missing, context plus missing plus innovation. So the category creation formula is the change in context, and then there's the missing. What is the pain or the missing thing that needs to be solved? And then the innovation is the technology or the new idea, the modification of a business protocol, whatever it might be. Context plus missing plus innovation, that's what generates new categories.
I would think that a lot of people like talking about the magical day for epiphany, but I wonder if we could explore the 12 months after the workshop. The category POV is written, the leadership team is aligned, but then they actually have to implement it, rewrite the website, retain sales, redo investor decks, manage internal resistance from people who weren't in the room initially. What's the biggest execution trap companies fall into in the months after you leave?
One of the biggest misconceptions is that it's all external and it's all marketing. Category design is not marketing. Marketing is the tip of the spear, sure. They're going to be the ones that are going to communicate to the world, but it starts the day after the workshops are done, and mobilizing the category starts internally. The first thing we tell CEOs to do is rally the troops and communicate what the category is to everybody, to the engineers, to HR, to the sales team. And that's the first place that the category design mobilization needs to take place. When Play Bigger came out, there's a lot of talk in Play Bigger about lightning strikes. And lightning strikes are the concept of communicating your category in one big event, right? You're concentrating all the energy of the company. Think Super Bowl ad, right? Or some major product release at a trade show, and you fly in a big team, you've got new ad campaigns, you've got email campaigns, you've got analysts that you're meeting with. That's a lightning strike. What we realized early on in doing this was lightning strikes are great. They're usually large budget number items, combinations of items. But what really makes a category tick is the ongoing day-to-day activity that takes place. We call it the heartbeats, the rolling thunder. So instead of thinking in lightning strikes all the time, which is fun, every company should have 2 or 3 events a year that are big. The rolling thunder is what you do every day. It's recording a podcast like this. It's writing a blog article. It's social posts. It's posters in the break room. We had one client that took their POV and they hand painted it on the wall of their hallway. I think theirs was 700 words. All 700 words written like the Constitution in the hallway of the company. And so that day-to-day rolling thunder of keeping the momentum going and the heartbeat of the category story, that's really the deepest part of the strategy that people need to adopt. Lightning strikes are fun. I've been involved with some pretty fun stuff, some crazy stuff. I won't disclose the client, but we were going to drape a skyscraper in a silk drapery and have it unveil the skyscraper on the day of their product release. They couldn't get approval from the city of San Francisco. It was a great idea and a little bit manic, but they still had a great rollout. But a lightning strike can also be a very simple thing. It could be maybe 5 major influencers that get together for a dinner at some conference. A big steak dinner can sometimes be as effective as a multi-million-dollar ad on the Super Bowl.
For CEOs who are probably thinking there's so many ways that I could do this. How would you suggest that they condense their thinking into something that's a bit more actionable and implementable?
CEOs, they have an incredibly, sometimes unmanageable task of running a company. They're satisfying investors, they're satisfying analysts, they're satisfying employees, they're satisfying the board. And one part of category design strategy that's core to a CEO is always having that mission, the flag on the hill that you're going to march to. And if you've got that common denominator that you can always come back to and always ground yourself, it's just so powerful. I've seen so many CEOs, and I fell into the trap when I chased the shiny object. Oh, a new technology, that's cool. We're going to be that company tomorrow. If you're always chasing shiny objects, you're never able to focus on what you're really set out to be. Think of category design as that grounding effect that keeps people in the right place. It's also a very useful tool. The story itself, the category point of view, very useful tool in knowing where you are in the market. There's a concept in the book we call the adjacent possible. It was stolen from biology, actually. And it's how the evolution of new technologies impacts society. Think of augmented reality, right? You've got on one end of the scale, virtual reality. Then you've got augmented reality where, things are actually in your existing world. Maybe you're wearing a headset. And then you've got all the way to the far right of the scale in the adjacent possible concept, which is hard to explain in a podcast, but you've got what society will accept and what they won't accept. And in the world of VR, AR, then all the way to the far side is teleportation. No one's ready to accept that yet. But even if that's your category vision, you don't want to be saying, we're going to teleport you in 5 years. You want to control your story a little bit. You want to keep the adjacent possible balanced so that society accepts the story you're giving them, even though you're sprinkling a little bit of vision into it. Reality speaks so much more stronger than what you know is going to be there eventually. You just got to feed it to the world in a way that they can absorb it.
I'm sure you get this question a lot. I'm sure people are thinking it, so I'll ask you, how long does it typically take to see market traction from the new category positioning?
It can be immediate to years. There's really no good answer to that. It all depends on the discipline that you have of staying the course. I've seen some very lucky companies where they roll out the category, and if they get lucky, some analyst adopts it immediately, and the analyst adopts it in such a way that they think it's their idea. That's like the most brilliant move available to a company. If you're meeting with Gartner and all of a sudden the Gartner analyst embraces your story, even if they change your category name by one or two or all three words, whatever it might be, let them. Take it from them, because they're the ones that are going to publish it, and people are going to start to think, there's a new category. Gartner came up with it. You spoon-fed it to the Gartner analyst, that's fine. But accomplishing that, it's a monumental task. I'm not going to be shy, or I'm not going to pull punches. Getting the effective communication of that category out can take years, but you stay the course. You keep communicating that point of view every day. Set the rules of the category. This is an important idea of category design. If think about Uber. If you've traveled the world, there's all sorts of different ride-sharing applications for taxis, metro systems, car sharing like Uber and Lyft. But guess what? Uber set the rules. And every app you fire up looks like Uber. It's got a map, it's got the destination, it lets you choose what you want to ride, and you say, get me a ride. By setting the rules of your category, you're telling any would-be competitor how they have to compete. And they're going to be chasing you at all times. So setting the rules of the category is another key piece of category design that we convey during the workshops. And some companies have very simple rules that they can enable, a new taxonomy, new language that they could bring to the world. And those are the things, once you start seeing people using your words, once you see competitors using your terminology and emulating you, your category is taking hold.
I was just thinking that before category design, most companies would have been creating content that perhaps competed in crowded search terms, depending on the company, things like how to improve sales productivity, customer experience best practices, etc. But after category design, they probably should be creating content that educates people about the new category problem. And I wonder how you guide companies to flip their content strategy from competing for attention to creating new attention.
It's really just a different way of thinking. We'll educate a marketing department, and we start by saying, look, throw away everything you know about marketing and learn how to talk with the problem first. It's a very simple thing. If you can say why somebody's in pain, you can sell them a Band-Aid, right? And there's the ultimate category win if your brand becomes the name of the category someday, right? Xerox, Kleenex. Those are called proprietary eponyms. There's actually a term for it. If you can communicate the problem to people, then everything else you communicate is going to fill in the gaps for them and fill the hole. And so once we can convince a marketing team, stop talking about your brand, stop talking about how good you are, how fast you are, start talking about the problems you solve, you get it. And you can still do everything you do today, videos, blog articles, websites, ads, and it's all going to communicate a lot of the same stuff, but you're just doing it in a tone of voice that's more manipulative to how people think. People think in problems and they solve problems with categories. And it's brain science. Play Bigger, the original book, gets into it quite a bit. And it's how people think and make decisions. When you're in the mood for peas for your dinner tonight and you don't have any, you don't go to the store and look for the pea aisle. You go to the frozen food aisle. Right? You think in categories. That's really the key to this, is just modify how you do marketing so that you're always painting the picture of the problem that you solve, and it changes everything.
What would be the role of a founder or a CEO with this in the space of content creation for category evangelism?
Every company needs an evangelist. I don't care who it is. It can be somebody with the title evangelist. It can be the CEO or the founders. It's got to be somebody with a voice who's compelling, somebody that can tell the story in any audience, anywhere, anytime, and somebody that has authority, right? One thing that people respond to, and they respond really well to it, is when you're telling them what problem they have and that you can solve it, and you're doing it in an authoritative, very simple to understand language, no jargon, no buzzwords. We throw that stuff out when we're doing our work. You're doing it in language that anybody can understand. That's when they become receptive. And so whoever the evangelist is that's going to be the forward-facing image of the company, and you might have tens of evangelists, anybody that's out there, whoever those people are, they just have to be very articulate, and they need to have that POV burned into their firmware, right? We all have language we use. I do it all the time. Everything that I've said on this podcast, I've probably said 1,000 times, if not more. And I don't veer from the story, right? If I start to invent new language just because I think there's a better way to say it, I'm probably going to bite my tongue, because I'm going to think about it think of it what writers and artists do. They recreate the same thing over and over until they reach perfection. And that one day we talked about, where we refine every line and every word in the point of view, that's the process of gaining perfection. And We make sure every word and every line counts. And then we want people to use that over and over again.
Okay. Some advice there. You've built a business around category design, but I imagine there are companies that come to you where you actually say, actually, you don't need to create a new category. And I wonder, what are the conditions where category design is a wrong strategy and a company should just compete in an existing category?
There are more of them than there are category creators. We have on our website, we call it office hours. Anybody can book time with Kevin and I and talk about their business and their category. And I think we do 3 or 4 a week. They're not sales calls. They're literally just, we jam with somebody and hear what they have to say and give them category advice. And think about that, 50 weeks a year, 52 weeks a year, 3 to 5 conversations a week. That's hundreds a year. We've been doing it for 10 years. Of all of those companies we've talked to, and if we talk to a couple hundred in a given year, we only choose 5 that we work with. That's a pretty narrow audience.
Yeah.
And we are as selective as clients are when they come to us, or are we the right people to work with? We say no more than we say yes. And usually we say no because we don't see the category, or we see a team that we don't think is capable of delivering the category. That's usually on the rare side. It's usually somebody that they're already in a category somebody created. And if we can't carve out the niche of why they're different, it's going to be a futile challenge to try to bring them there. And we're honest about it. We'll tell them and we'll say, look, examine yourself and see if you can find out what's different, what's unique, and come back to us. And we've had companies do that. And typically they realize, okay, we're in a crowded space. We need to be different. And we don't want to be competing with tens of different companies. We want to be unique. And it might be as simple as telling the story slightly different, carving out some new language that makes you feel different than other companies in your space. That's the niche play, right? Christopher Lockhead has a book called Niche Down that he published. And it's really about, you're in a crowded space, but why are you different? But yeah, not every company is cut out for it.
When would it be smarter to be number 2 in a big category than number 1 in a small category?
It depends on your perspective. Some of the most successful categories out there are not everyday categories that you and I know and love. Obviously, the big ones are obvious, right? Airbnb, Uber, those are the ones that rattle off the top of your tongue. But some of the ones we've worked with, especially in like life sciences or very focused areas of technology. In fact, I can think of one. There's only, I think, the big shipping companies in the world. There's only a handful, right?
Yeah.
And the companies that move all those containers from continent to continent. There you've got a market of maybe 8 big companies and 20 little ones, 30 little ones, a bunch of small boys. They're never going to have thousands of clients, but they're going to own their category by having 6 of the 8 big boys. And I don't care about the quantitative number that might be associated with a category. It's a matter of, can you dominate it?
Okay.
It even works for small businesses, right? Local restaurants.
Yeah.
You might have 3 seafood restaurants in a given town, but there's usually one that stands out from everybody else because they're different. And that's what you need to look for. If you're in a crowded space, be the one that's different.
Most definitely. And when we last spoke, you told me that the biggest misconception people have is that category design is marketing. So when a CMO reaches out to work with category design advisors, you tell them to get their CEO on the line first. And I wonder if you could walk me through what happens when you have that conversation with a CMO who is trying to champion category design internally, but the CEO sees it as just a marketing thing.
Obviously, we dance around it very softly. We don't insult them. And frankly, I think a lot of CMOs approach us more so than CEOs. It is just the way of the world. category design is thought of as a form of messaging and positioning. And sure, it's got all that as part of the outcome. But if the CEO is not behind the initiative, it's going to fail. One of the companies that came to us, a very big company, and I'm not even going to mention their name because I don't want to be seen as trying to flash it. But when they came to us, it was the CMO, and she came to us and said, "We need to do category design. I've got the budget. I'm going to make this happen. My team's ready to meet with you tomorrow." I said, "That's great. The CEO has to be behind this. This is not a marketing project." She was insulted. She was pissed off. And she said, "No, this is my initiative. I don't need the CEO's involved with a bunch of other things right now. This has nothing to do with." I said, "No, you're wrong." I said, "Because this is going to influence everything that CEO does, all the strategies they implement." And I said, "Look, no offense, but get the CEO on the line and let them decide for themselves." And this is back before, obviously, we had our new book. So we got a copy of Play Bigger into the CEO's hands. Took months, probably 2 to 3 months before they finally read the book. And then she reached out and she said, "CEO wants to talk." And the CEO got in a Zoom call with us. The CMO sat in the sideline, and she realized once the CEO was on board, her job was going to be easy. She was still the champion. She was the one that led most of the effort, but the CEO was the one that anointed her as the category leader within the company. And that's what you need. You need that blessing of the CEO that this is the strategy for the company.
Is there something that you find more often than not lands by saying it that usually shifts a CEO's thinking?
Typically, when we start to talk to them about business strategy, and this is not messaging, it's not marketing, it's not positioning, it's core strategy. When we can get that message across, they embrace it. And obviously the book gets into it deeply, the new book even more so than Play Bigger. But the category creation formula was written specifically for CEOs and investors. And when you dig into it, the book itself is a playbook. We gave away our secrets. You could grab the category creation formula, and if you got a smart team, you could rip through the book and you could probably start to put a project together inside. That said, the one thing that is difficult to separate between an internal initiative and bringing other people in, even if it's a board member, an investor, some advisor, executive teams have a perception of what their category is and who they are. But outsiders have a perspective, outside perspective that's different. And that alone can make an outsider a very valuable part of the team that's putting this together. And the book talks about that. We talk about perception versus perspective. And some of the best CEOs I've ever met, they surround themselves with people. They surround themselves with big thinkers. I did it when I started my first startup in the 90s. There was a gentleman by the name of Dick Morley, who's now passed away, but Dick was a legendary entrepreneur in the New England area for years, made some huge investments, paid off big, and he wrote the first check for my company. And I remember him telling me he in category design wasn't even a thought back then. It was definitely around. People did it, sure. One of the best category design ads in the world was Steve Jobs' 1984 ad, the Big Brother ad. But the concept of the discipline didn't exist. But I remember him telling me, he said, "Mike," he said, "write the story first. You've written a data sheet, you've written a business plan. I don't give a shit about that. Write the story that I want to resonate to. And once you do that, then, you'll be able to make this business work." He also told me to quit my existing job before he would invest in me. And I did that without telling my wife. That was an interesting couple days in the house.
You started out as a hardcore programmer with a computer science degree, then spent 30 years as CEO and CMO of startups before co-founding Category Design Advisors. What did you learn as a technical founder turned CEO that makes you see category design differently than perhaps someone who would come up through marketing or consulting?
That's interesting. I don't want to pigeonhole different types of founders or CEOs, but engineers, programmers, mathematicians, scientists, they have a way of looking at large collections of data and environments and trying to solve problems from that mess. And I think some of the best CEOs I've seen are of that nature. They tend to analyze what they're facing and come up with solutions. Don't get me wrong, I've also met some incredible CEOs that were pure business marketing types. I love when I'm talking to somebody that really wants to dissect their company and try to figure out what it is that makes it tick. And when we're working with clients and we present the category creation formula, so many of those CEOs nod their head, they get it, because we put a business problem into an actual formula. And it makes sense. And it's a very simple tool, a tool we developed to help push the conversation along. But we realized early on it was a core part of what we did.
Was there a company where you got category positioning wrong?
Yeah, sure. And typically what happens, unless they totally want to back away from it, we've only had one client that abandoned the process along the way. And I think that was more of a financial issue for them. We keep with it until we hit it. If the POV doesn't resonate on that fourth day, we come back, we do it again. Once you have everyone in the room looking at what we call a universal truth, right? I'm in Florida right now. If you were with me, I would say that's a blue sky out there. That's a universal truth. You can't debate it. When we introduce a category as a universal truth and nobody can debate it, then it's successful. And if we haven't done that, if we haven't gotten to that point, our job's not done.
I'm just thinking back to a phrase that you have mentioned. You've introduced this concept of the adjacent possible, the idea that exciting products and services are born at the edge of what's currently possible, and that many fatigued companies are stuck in what was possible yesterday. This isn't a term that most B2B tech CEOs would know. How would you actually use the adjacent possible as a filter when you're working with a company? Could you give us an example?
Yeah, so again, I'll get you a link to an article that does explain it.
Yep.
The adjacent possible is a graphical, it's a graph that you can put yourself in, right? The far left is the technology you're introducing or the solution you're introducing. And the bottom axis is society's willingness to adopt it. If you're too far to the left, meaning the technology is a been here, done that technology, and society already accepts it willingly, that's not a new category. In the middle, or in the far side, are the technologies that are so advanced, right? Think AI 10 years ago. So advanced that society's not ready to absorb it, right? So you're in the far upper right side of the adjacent possible graph. In the middle is what's called the adjacent possible. It's where the two overlap. And it's where somebody can envision the future and accept the technology or the solution that you're presenting. And they can say, I can implement that. That's something that does solve my problem. Might be a little new. I might need to think about this, but it's at that point in time where the category is able to be accepted by society. And when your buyers can see something new that they're willing to accept and pay for, that's when a new category is just poised to take off. AI, Gen AI, even just 3 or 4 years ago, ChatGPT comes out, everybody's all excited. People didn't start implementing it right away. Within a year, people started playing with it themselves. Within 18 months, people are implementing it. New tools are coming out. If somebody comes to a CEO today and says, oh yeah, we have a generative AI with an algorithm that helps solve XYZ, they don't think twice. They're willing to accept it. That's the adjacent possible and that comfort factor of buyers. Very powerful tool.
How do you know when a company is trying to leap too far beyond the adjacent possible?
I think everybody in the room knows at that point, and we've been there. We've had conversations where it's typically one person in the room that's the big visionary, and that's okay. Sometimes there is a big vision. Look at Amazon. What a great example. When Jeff Bezos wrote his shareholder letter, I think it was 1995, all they had were books. They sold books. But he wrote a shareholder letter saying that Amazon someday was going to be the everything store. All right, we're going to sell DVDs, we're going to sell shoes, we're going to sell houses. Shareholders read that letter, and sure, it was a little crazy at the time, but you know what? He knew he could get there. He set the path to get there, and he implemented the strategy to get there. And today I think they're $2 trillion. I don't know what their market cap is now. Having that vision is okay. But don't go out and say you're going to sell someone a house in 1985 on an online store. That wouldn't have worked back then.
Chapter 9 in the book that's coming out, I think you titled it The Dominant Design is Everything. This sounds like you're not just claiming a category, you're actually designing the rules of the category in a way that favors your company. It could perhaps seem a little manipulative or strategic depending upon how you frame it. How would you help a CEO think about designing category rules that give them an unfair advantage without it feeling like they're stacking the deck?
The concept of the dominant design comes from an economist named Paul Gorosky. Paul Gorosky studied categories and the economics behind categories and published quite a bit of material about it. It was used in Play Bigger. It was used in our current book coming out. And the concept of the evolution of a category is when a category starts, there's usually one or two people that have stumbled on the idea, they've come up with this idea, and they start to implement it. Then all of a sudden, a bunch of different companies pile in. The cell phone market is a great example. There was, all the companies in the early 2000s that were offering cell phones into the market, very cluttered space. What happens is eventually the market chooses the design that they find the best fitting to solve their problem. And that's the choosing of the dominant design. And in the case of smartphones, the iPhone was the dominant design that was chosen. And when that happens, the number of vendors tends to drop off and the market cap tends to grow. And so what you want to be is you want to be the company that is the dominant design that gets chosen so that market cap is yours to grab and the other competitors that are chasing you start to dwindle off. It's a great concept. And once you see it and you realize, oh, if I can set the rules for the category and I can create the POV for the category, you don't care that other people are following you. That's great. Actually, competitors lend credibility to you. A lot of our clients say, do we want competitors? I'm like, hell yeah. You want them using your language because unless they do a better job at it, you're going to win because you introduced it. There's one cognitive science concept called the anchoring effect. And that's the first thing that delivered a concept to you is the one you remember. So if you're the company that introduces a problem and solution to somebody first, you're going to be the brand they remember. And that's a key part of why science works behind category design.
AI is prevalent in today's world. Every B2B tech company is trying to figure out how AI changes their category or creates new ones. From your vantage point of working with 50 plus companies, how is AI changing the speed at which categories emerge and die? Are we going to see categories that used to take 5 to 7 years to mature now maturing in 18 months?
It certainly has sped up the cycle that we move at today. Somebody was having a debate with me that AI is this new technology. And you know what? AI is like electricity. 100 years ago, there was electricity and people were like, I don't need a I don't need fuel for my candles in the house. No, you plug in a light bulb, you have electricity. AI is electricity. It's the new electricity. We use it every day, more so than we even think, whether it's spell check in your text messaging, something in your calendar, your email that's suggesting responses. My dad is 85 years old, and he told me he used AI the other day in his golf league to create a new column in his spreadsheet. I was so impressed. I'm like, I didn't even know he knew what a spreadsheet was. AI is just our new electricity. And in 5 years, there'll be another thing just like it. There'll be something new that we're all going to be amazed at, but we're going to use it every day.
Okay. So it's certainly sped things up. Would you say it's killing off certain categories?
No, I think it's creating new categories. Sure, it's changing the way certain industries work, right? Like programming. I was a computer scientist back when they were real computer scientists, right? We wrote real code. A year or two ago, I started delving into the API of ChatGPT. We're building an AI product to do category design for people. We were hoping to have it ready for the book, but it's not quite there yet. But I realized that programming today is a different world. You don't write line by line code and every character matters and syntax matters. You think what you want to solve, and AI does the details for you. So AI is creating new job roles and new functions and new skills as opposed to eliminating them. People that can adopt that, whatever your discipline, if you're in marketing or you're in sales or you're in accounting, if there's AI tools that help you do your job better and more efficiently, use them by all means. Otherwise, the people that don't, they're the ones that are going to be left behind.
Interesting. I hope we've covered a reasonable amount of ground. I'm sure there's a lot more we could dive into, but we just don't have the time. But is there something in the space of category design and as it relates to scaling revenue growth that you feel we haven't touched upon as yet? If so, what would it be?
God, there's tons. The book itself has so many different new concepts introduced, and whether it's the category creation formula, our new book, or the original book that introduced category design, Play Bigger, both are just so loaded with material. The book is coming out in just 3 weeks. I don't know when this podcast will air, but in February 24th in North America, it hits the streets. March 12th in Europe. There's an Indian version being produced. There's other languages being produced, and it's expected to really take the industry by storm. You can find out more about the book at thecategorycreationformula.com. You can pre-order copies on your favorite bookstore. It's available in audio, Kindle. Our website even has the first introduction in chapter 1 for download if you want to take a look at it first. But it's written in a way that's not a traditional business book. Very narrative, it's storytelling. You'd expect that from a storyteller like Kevin. If you like to play bigger, you're going to love Category Creation Formula.
We'll include links to that in the show notes. If people want to get in touch with you or follow some of your work, is the website the best place, or are there particular social media handles that you would ask people to head to?
Yeah, all the social handles are listed on our company website, categorydesignadvisors.com, and on the book website, the categorycreationformula.com. There's probably more ways to reach us on those two websites than you could ever imagine. But if you reach out, you're dealing with two guys that respond within a day, and we've got free office hours. You want to talk category design strategy, just book the time on our website.
All right. Like I said, we'll include links in the show notes. Mike, this has been terrific. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much, Vinay. I appreciate your time. I know it's early in Australia, and I'm getting a sunset. You've probably already got sun in your backyard.
I do, yes. No worries. Mike, thanks again.